Today we are going to keep talking about circles. So this is still section 8.2, but today we're going to focus on writing circles in standard form. And the way we're going to do that, so our goal today is to use completing the square to write any sort of circle equation in standard form and find the center and the radius. So what I'm going to do is go through an example problem on the next slide, and the following slide, write out the steps. I couldn't fit it all on one slide, so it's on two separate slides. All right, so here's our equation we're going to work with today. X squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 8y plus 4 equals 0. So that's long and jumbled right now, but it is a circle equation. We have an x squared and a y squared, so that means we have a circle. So our goal right now is to rearrange this and write it in standard form. So our first step is going to be to get the variables on one side of the equation. So anything with an x or a y on the left side, and then on the right side I subtract, or if I was to add, any sort of constant values that don't have an x or a y. So now we have all our variables on the left, constants on the right. The next step is to group like terms. So I've got my x squared and my 4x, my y squared and my negative 8y, and I'm going to group those together. And you'll see I left kind of a blank spot next to 4x and next to negative 8y, and that's because our next step is going to be to complete the square once for our x group and another time for our y group. So a little reminder, to complete the square we have to add that b over 2 squared value. So for the x group, I'm going to take that 4, that's my b value. So 4 over 2 squared, which is 2 squared, which is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides of my equation. So you can see I added that orange 4 with the x's, and also on the right side, adding positive 4 to that negative 4 that was already there. And then I need to do that a second time for the y group. So I take negative 8 over 2 squared, which is 16, and I add 16 to the y group, and I add 16 to the right side of the equation. Remember, you have to do something to both sides of the equation so that everything stays equal. The next step is to factor your two groups. So you have an x group and a y group, and they both are perfect squares now, and they both factor beautifully. So for the x group, think about what are factors of 4 that add up to 4? Well, that's going to be 2 and 2. So x plus 2 times x plus 2. Now we're going to do that for the y group. So what are factors of 16 that add up to negative 8? That's going to be negative 4 and negative 4. So y minus 4 times y minus 4 equals 16, because you had 16 plus 4 and then a negative 4, so add those up and you get 16. Now we can write those as perfect squares, so x plus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 16. And now that is in standard form of your circle equation. So now we can find the center and the radius. So the center, the x-coordinate is negative 2, and the y-coordinate is positive 4. It's kind of opposite of what it looks like in the equation. So center is at negative 2, positive 4, and the radius is at the square root of 16, which is 4. So this last slide over here, I'm just going to write out those steps that we went through. So that first step was to get the variables on one side, constants on the other side of your equation. The second step was to group like terms. So group like variables together, so the x's with the x's, y's with the y's. The third step is to complete the square for both your x and your y groups. And remember, that means you're adding b over 2 squared to both sides of your equation. And then the last step is to factor and write in standard form. So that's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Looks like I forgot the squared there. That's okay. and, oh, there it is. Center is HK and the radius is R.